Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. That's season 3, episode 11. So let's get right into it. So we begin the episode with everybody at the house. They're waking up, eating some breakfast, ready to get the day going. Lisa is by the pool. She's still very mad at Jen for the whole situation that happened the night before at that dinner. And she says that she's been there for Jen, that she's been a really good friend to Jen. So that's why she doesn't understand why Jen wouldn't admit that. So she's still bothered about that. She is telling this to Whitney and to Angie K. And they're both listening. And then Whitney agrees a little bit and compares the situation to Heather's and says that, in the entire trip, Heather hasn't really been kind to her, and there is still that big elephant in the room in regards to their friendship. Now, we know from last week that Jen apologized to Angie K for throwing that drink, but in this episode we see it once again. They are super lovely towards one another now. It's as if nothing even had happened. But Jen apologizes once again and says that she didn't mean to upset Angie K by throwing that drink. And of course, Angie forgives her and they are back with each other and they're having fun. I will say that the apology from Jen, it did seem sincere, especially since she gave it more than once. So then Lisa leaves the pool and she goes into the house and she starts to have a conversation with Heather. They are both in their feelings towards Jen, so they think that they need to talk to her because they feel like their friendship with her is a little bit toxic. So they're not really appreciating what has been happening and what went down at that dinner the night before. And Heather also mentions that she feels like nobody's giving her a break, not even Whitney. Like they're up on her, and they just won't let her catch a breath. So she feels a little mad about that, so they feel like they should address this to Jen. But they all get together and they all go to the beach and they actually have a pretty fun day. They have some games where they're building sandcastles, where they're racing with each other. So it was fun to see them have fun and not be fighting and bickering. Then Lisa, Heather, and Jen leave to have some lunch, and then the other girls stay at the beach and they are surfing and it's pretty fun. They're all having fun. Meredith, she wasn't feeling it, so she just sat back and watched them, but the other girls definitely had fun. So like I said, the other 3 women that went to have lunch were Lisa, Heather, and Jen. Now we know that they're not really in the best of terms that morning, so they take it as an opportunity to talk out their issues and to hash out their problems and to hopefully try to get a solution. But it all really comes down to the fact that Jen is mad at Lisa for having taken Angie K's side right away whenever she threw the drink, and she's especially mad at Heather for still being friends with Angie H. She really has an issue with Heather still being with Angie H after knowing that her husband made that account with the name Shaw exposed. Jen even calls Heather a flip-flopper. She says that she's very flip-flopper, that she's always doing it, that she can't take a side. So then Heather, she takes her shot and says, well, you are mad at me. I've been hearing that, and when you were in that hot tub at Whitney's house, you were talking bad about me. And basically what Lisa and Heather are trying to tell to Jen is that when they're friends and when they're having fun, it's amazing. They're having a great time, but they do feel like there are some of these moments where Jen gets in her feelings and she treats them horribly. So they feel like it's a toxic relationship, that it's, they never know how she's going to be reacting in that moment. And then that's where Jen drops a very heavy bomb and says that the Angie H situation really gets to her because she attempted to end her life after everything that had been going on, and then that just piling on top, that it was just really hard for her. So I can just imagine how bad she must be feeling. So she did throw that in there, and I thought that was like really serious. and they all leave. They're not mad at each other, but there's also not really like a resolution that they came to. But when they were on their way back to the house in the Sprinter, it was a really emotional moment because they even started crying. I think that it's hard for them to, because they want to hold Jen accountable. I know that, but I also feel like they might be being a little hesitant to be too harsh because they do know the situation that she's going through. So I feel like having those two things kind of makes it hard for them to fully make her take accountability and to hold her accountable for the bad things that she does. But once everybody gets to the house, Whitney planned a Marilyn Monroe theme party, and she gets these really cheap, ugly wigs for everyone, but it doesn't even look like Marilyn Monroe. It looks like George Washington, but they all wear them and they dress up and they go to this really nice restaurant. So everything seemed okay at the restaurant until Meredith asks what happened at lunch. And then Whitney also asks, yeah, what happened? Did you guys resolve anything? And for some reason, Jen Shaw got very mad at Whitney for asking, and she says, you want to know so bad? You want to know so bad? Well, let me tell you what happens. And she tells her all the heavy things that they talked about. And I think that Whitney was taken aback a little because she just wanted to know what happened, and Jen Shaw kind of snapped at her. So they kind of explain what the lunch was about, and then Jen says, if we're going to be putting our feelings in the table, why don't you address the issue that you have with Heather? And this is the beginning of a really, really long battle between Whitney and Heather. They start going back and forth because Whitney really feels like Heather is not listening to her, that she doesn't value her, that she's really dismissive because the past times that she's tried to bring it up, Heather gets up and leaves, doesn't let her explain. But Heather keeps talking, and I'm usually always on Heather's side, but on this dinner, I did feel a little bit bad for Whitney because you could tell that she was really trying to express her feelings, and Heather would respond with really sarcastic, passive-aggressive digs. Like, I didn't think that was cool at all. I really did feel bad for Whitney because she even started crying. Heather did, however, bring up the fact that she still doesn't understand why Whitney dragged Heather into that whole rumor with the Lisa and with the courtside tickets. And I'm so glad that Meredith spoke up and said, yeah, let's address that, because Whitney, you also dragged me into it, saying that I started the rumor, which I did not. So I'm glad they addressed that topic. And also, there are a little bit of undercover feelings between Heather and Whitney, I can tell, because Whitney, one of her feelings that she has is that she doesn't understand why Heather is really loyal to Jen, who treats her horribly. And Heather, on the other hand, doesn't understand why Whitney and Lisa are BFFs now all of a sudden, when Whitney talked bad about Lisa a lot. So those are two things that neither of them really quite understand. So I don't know, maybe there's some jealousy going on in there. But there is a very big issue with them communicating, because neither of them are communicating effectively in order to solve their issue. And Whitney even tells Heather, there comes a moment where Heather doesn't even turn around to look at her anymore. Like, she's done with it, because Jen brought up the fact that Whitney in the hot tub said that she wanted to take a friendship break from Heather, which was news to Heather, and according to her, it really hurt her. So she is done. She doesn't even want to talk to Whitney any longer. So everybody's feeling a little bit awkward, but then they decide to go to the club, which a lot of housewife shows that I've seen, they all are going to clubs like Beverly Hills, Potomac, and now here in Salt Lake City. They seem to have some fun. There were still some teams, you know, Lisa was with Whitney and Donna, and then the other ones were in the other side. But they get to the house super late, and they're all crazy. I'm sure they must have had a lot of drinks, and they're ordering pizza, they're getting naked, they're dancing, they're all on top of each other. But the good thing is that for the most part, everybody's having fun. So Jen and Heather are the last ones to go to sleep. This was around 3 a.m. Heather goes to her room. She shuts the door and locks it. And then next thing we know, 2 hours later, somebody breaks into her room and brutally attacks her. And we only know this because the next day she calls Meredith and Jen to her room, and she reveals that she has a purple eye, scratches and bruises in her arm. And that's where the episode ends. We don't know who did that to Heather. It's going to be interesting to find out who, because it looked like she locked the door. So I really want to know who it was. But that's pretty much all we had this episode. It was a little bit longer than usual, but let me know, you guys, in the comments, what do y'all think about Whitney and Heather's relationship and this fight and just this episode in general, and who do you think punched Heather? So let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to subscribe and like so we can talk about all of our favorite reality TV shows. So until the next one, you guys have a great one. Bye.